Between 1939 and 1945, the German armed forces mobilized over 18 million men, forming one of the most tactically advanced armies of World War II. German infantry doctrine centered on the machine gun, with riflemen supporting high rate-of-fire weapons that dominated the battlefield. German forces emphasized flexibility, aggressive offense, and decentralized command. From elite airborne and mountain troops to late-war emergency militia, this video examines all major German military specialties that fought from Poland to Berlin, including regular units, political formations, foreign volunteers, and final emergency forces. Riflemen. German infantry squads were built around the machine gun. Riflemen armed mainly with Karabiner 98K bolt-action rifles existed to protect and support the MG, not to provide main firepower. Squad leaders increasingly carried MP-40 submachine guns. Late in the war, some units received STG-44 assault rifles, changing close combat tactics. Machine gunners. The core of German infantry tactics. Each squad centered on an MG-34 or MG-42, operated by a three-man team. The MG-42 fired up to 1,200 rounds per minute, dominating the battlefield. German doctrine stated clearly, infantry supports the machine gun, not the opposite. Grenadiers. Specialists using rifle grenades, launched from carabiner rifles for short-range indirect fire. Later in the war, Panzerfaust and Panzerschreck replaced rifle grenades for anti-armor combat. All infantrymen carried stick grenades for assault and defense. Mortar crews operated 50, 81, and 120 mm mortars at platoon to battalion level. By 1944, mortars were concentrated in heavy companies for stronger fire support. Doctrine emphasized rapid fire followed by quick relocation to avoid counter-battery fire. Anti-tank gun crews operated towed anti-tank guns from outdated 37 mm models to effective 75 mm and powerful 88 mm guns. Guns were positioned in ambush, engaging tanks at close range where armor was weakest, provided the backbone of German defensive anti-tank fire. Anti-tank infantry. Infantry equipped with Panzerfaust or Panzerschreck weapons to counter superior enemy armor. Panzerfaust could penetrate any Allied tank at short range. Required extreme courage, as operators had to engage tanks within machine gun distance. By 1945, nearly every infantryman was trained to use Panzerfaust. Snipers. Elite marksmen armed with scoped carabiner rifles. Trained in camouflage, patience, and precision shooting. Operated mainly on the Eastern Front. Famous snipers achieved hundreds of confirmed kills, targeting officers and weapon crews. Flamethrower troops. Operated portable flamethrowers and specialized vehicles for bunker and trench assault. Organized within engineer units. Extremely dangerous role due to short range and exposed fuel tanks. Highly effective in urban combat and fortification clearing. Engineers. Combat engineers handled demolitions, obstacle clearance, fortification building, and bridge construction. Organized in battalion-level units attached to infantry formations, equipped with explosives, mine detectors, flamethrowers, and assault weapons. Engineers often led attacks, clearing paths under enemy fire. Reconnaissance troops. Specialized units conducting scouting and enemy identification. Used armored cars, motorcycles, and light vehicles. Operated ahead of main forces, maintaining contact with the enemy. Doctrine emphasized aggressive patrols and constant pressure. Signals troops. Communication specialists operating radios and field telephones. German forces relied heavily on radio communication at all levels, enabling rapid coordination and flexible command. This gave strong tactical advantages over opponents using vulnerable landlines. Medics. Combat medics provided first aid and evacuated wounded soldiers. Doctrine emphasized rapid treatment and transport to field hospitals, usually armed only with pistols and marked with Red Cross armbands. Casualty rates among medics were very high. Rear services, logistics units sustained combat operations with transport, supply, maintenance, and administration. Relied on railways, supported by trucks and horse-drawn wagons. Only about 20% of divisions were mechanized, with most infantry moving on foot. Motorized infantry. Infantry transported by trucks or armored carriers, able to keep pace with armored units. By 1944, these formations were considered elite and better equipped than regular infantry. Late in the war, assault rifles became common at squad level, level. Cavalry. Mounted units operated mainly on the Eastern Front for reconnaissance and exploitation. As the war progressed, horses proved vulnerable to modern firepower. Most cavalry units were reorganized into mechanized formations by mid-war. Mountain troops. Elite infantry trained for mountain warfare in Norway, the Balkans, and the Caucasus, equipped with climbing gear, winter clothing, and camouflage, smaller than regular divisions, but highly trained. Fought in some of the most difficult terrain of the war. Military police maintained discipline, directed traffic, and apprehended deserters. Identified by metal gorget plates worn on the chest, became increasingly important late in the war as order broke down. Operated checkpoints and enforced harsh discipline. Railway troops, essential for logistics on the Eastern Front. Converted captured railways, repaired sabotage, and operated military trains. Advances often stalled when rail conversion failed to keep pace with the front. Chemical troops, originally intended for chemical warfare, later focused on smoke generation and rocket artillery. Poison gas was never used due to mutual deterrent. These troops provided smoke screens for river crossing and battlefield concealment. Panzer troops. German tank crews operated armored vehicles in battalion-sized units called panzer battalions, organized within panzer divisions. Early in the war, German forces relied on the Panzer III and Panzer IV. Mid-war saw the introduction of the Panther and Tiger tanks. Late war shortages led to simplified and improvised designs. Tiger tanks used 5-man crews, while Panthers and Panzer IV tanks used 4-man crews. German tank doctrine emphasized aggressive maneuver, flanking attacks, and concentration of force. Superior crew training and widespread radio communication often compensated for numerical inferiority on the battlefield. Field artillery. German field artillery operated 105mm light field howitzers and 150mm heavy field howitzers in regiment-sized formations. Artillery doctrine emphasized precision fire rather than massive barrages. Forward observers directed accurate fire in close coordination with infantry units. German artillery was less numerous than Soviet artillery, but significantly more responsive. Artillery forward observers, specially trained officers and non-commissioned officers, operated alongside frontline infantry. Using radios, they directed artillery fire in real time. This allowed German units to call immediate fire support within minutes of identifying enemy positions. Skilled observers could deliver devastating precision strikes during combat. Rocket artillery. Rocket artillery units operated multi-barrel launchers, firing 150mm and 210mm rockets. These weapons produced a distinctive shrieking sound that had a strong psychological effect on enemy troops. Accuracy was limited compared to conventional artillery, but saturation fire was effective during assaults. Rocket units were organized into specialized brigades attached to armies for breakthrough operations. Anti-aircraft troops. Anti-aircraft units were operated primarily by the Air Force, rather than the Army. These units used 20mm, 37mm, 88mm, and 105mm guns. Anti-aircraft units defended cities, industrial zones, and field armies. By 1944, many Air Force ground units were reassigned to direct ground combat roles due to manpower shortages. Pilots, Luftwaffe air crews. German pilots operated fighters, bombers, and ground attack aircraft, including the Messerschmitt 109, Focke-Wulf 190, and Junkers 87 dive bomber. Early in the war, Germany achieved air superiority. By 1943, overwhelming Allied numbers and fuel shortages severely reduced effectiveness. Famous aces emerged on the Eastern Front, including Erich Hartmann, with 352 confirmed victories. The introduction of the Me-262 jet fighter came too late to change the outcome of the war. Paratroopers, Fallschirmjäger. German paratroopers were elite airborne infantry under Air Force command. After heavy losses during the invasion of Crete in 1941, large-scale airborne assaults were abandoned. Fallschirmjäger thereafter fought primarily as elite ground infantry. They received superior training and equipment. Notable engagements included Monte Cassino, Normandy, and the defense of Berlin. Their elite status was maintained until the end of World War II. Waffen-SS combat forces. The Waffen-SS expanded from 3 regiments in 1939 to 38 divisions by 1945. Early units consisted of ideologically motivated volunteers. Later formations included conscripts and foreign recruits. Waffen-SS units often received priority equipment and replacements. They gained a reputation for fanatical resistance and were responsible for numerous war crimes, particularly on the Eastern Front. Divisions such as Leibstandarte and Das Reich were both militarily effective and infamous for atrocities. Brandenburg Special Forces, Commandos. The Brandenburg Unit was a special operations force conducting sabotage, reconnaissance, and unconventional warfare. Small teams operated behind enemy lines, often disguised as enemy soldiers. These operations technically violated the laws of war. Early successes included capturing bridges intact during the invasion of Western Europe and infiltration missions in the East. By 1943, the unit expanded to division size and increasingly fought as conventional infantry, losing its special operations role. Surface Navy personnel, Kriegsmarine. German naval crews operated battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and smaller vessels in the Atlantic, Mediterranean, and Baltic seas. After early successes, the surface fleet was largely confined to port due to Allied naval superiority. Many sailors were reassigned to ground combat or submarine service. Famous ships such as Bismarck and Tirpitz achieved symbolic status, but had limited strategic impact. Submarine crews, U-boat forces. German submariners conducted convoy attacks in the Atlantic and Mediterranean. Early war operations caused severe Allied shipping losses. By 1943, improved anti-submarine tactics led to catastrophic casualties. Of approximately 40,000 submarine personnel, 30,000 were killed. This represented a 75% casualty rate. Submarine crews were considered elite and received better food and pay than other branches. Despite heavy sacrifice, they failed to disrupt Allied supply lines. Foreign volunteer units. Numerous foreign formations fought on Germany's side during World War II. These included the Spanish Blue Division, which sent approximately 18,000 volunteers to fight the Soviet Union between 1941 and 1943. Other units included the French SS, Charlemagne Division, Flemish and Dutch SS formations, Croatian units, and many smaller contingents. Motivations varied widely. Some volunteers were driven by anti-communism, others by fascist ideology, nationalism, or personal opportunity. Combat performance differed greatly. Certain units fought fanatically until destruction, while others collapsed or deserted after their first serious engagement. Collaborationist formations, Eastern Legions. Eastern Legion units were recruited from Soviet prisoners of war and occupied populations. These included the Turkestan Legion, Caucasian units, and the Russian Liberation Army under General Vlasov. Most were organized into battalions assigned to rear area security duties. Reliability was often questionable. Some units defected to partisan forces, while others fought loyally in hopes of gaining independence after the war. These formations reflected Germany's exploitation of ethnic tensions within the Soviet Union and its growing desperation for manpower. Volkssturm, People's Militia. The Volkssturm was formed in October 1944 from males aged 16 to 60 who were not already serving in the military. Total strength reached approximately 6 million civilians. Training was minimal, often lasting only a few hours. Weapons were obsolete, captured, or improvised, including single-shot anti-tank launchers. Volkssturm units were thrown into combat defending cities against overwhelming Allied forces. Casualties were catastrophic. Most units were destroyed or captured within days. The Volkssturm symbolized the final collapse of Nazi Germany. Hitler Youth military formations. Teenage boys aged 14 to 18 were militarized and deployed during the final months of the war. The 12th SS Panzer Division Hitler Youth was formed from 17 and 18-year-old volunteers in 1943 and fought fanatically in Normandy, suffering approximately 80% casualties. By 1945, even younger boys were pressed into Volkssturm units and anti-aircraft batteries. Child soldiers manning flak towers and defending Berlin became a stark example of the regime's criminal desperation. Penal battalions, Strafe units. Penal battalions were formed from military criminals, deserters, and convicted soldiers. These men were assigned suicide missions such as mine clearing, leading frontal assaults, or holding hopeless defensive positions. Discipline was brutal, and casualty rates were extreme. Survival meant redemption and return to regular units. Death meant disappearance from records. Similar to Soviet penal units, but smaller in scale, German penal battalions expanded rapidly after Stalingrad, as executions for desertion increased dramatically. Construction battalions. Construction units were non-combat formations, responsible for building fortifications, roads, airfields, and defensive lines. They constructed the Atlantic Wall, the West Wall, and countless field defenses. Personnel often included older men, wounded veterans, or soldiers deemed unfit for frontline combat. While essential to defensive preparations, these units were poorly armed and usually surrendered quickly when combat reached them. Camp Guard battalions. Camp Guard units consisted of SS and Wehrmacht personnel, responsible for guarding prisoner of war camps and concentration camps. Especially on the Eastern Front, these units committed mass atrocities against prisoners. Many guards were older reservists or wounded veterans unfit for frontline service. After the war, surviving camp guards were prosecuted for war crimes, occupation, and anti-partisan units. Security divisions were tasked with maintaining order in occupied territories and conducting anti-partisan operations. These units were often composed of lower quality or older troops. Under the pretext of anti-partisan warfare, they committed widespread atrocities against civilian populations. Brutality was especially severe in the Soviet Union, Poland, and the Balkans. Officers and command staff. The German officer corps emphasized tactical flexibility and mission-oriented command. Orders focused on objectives rather than strict instructions, allowing initiative at all levels. Units were trained to continue fighting effectively even if commanders were killed. Junior officers often led from the front and suffered disproportionately high casualties. The general staff system provided professional operational planning. However, increasing interference by Adolf Hitler after 1942 steadily degraded strategic decision-making and contributed to Germany's defeat.